Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.
Mostly, I'm present at the central office of the supervisory union. And public comments, I don't see any public here, and none on Zoom. So we'll move to the treasurer's report. So call on Doug Hugie, our treasurer.
Okay, yep. Sorry if any confusion, if I'm not quite sure if who did and didn't get it, but I think I replies most people did. So if there's an email question, just let me know. But so we're back on track. Hopefully everybody has the report, but not a lot to report this month. Account balances are all in good shape. Everything for the warrants that are coming this month, there's funds available to cover all the warrants. Tax collection is well underway in North Bennington. Tomorrow, I'll give my little spiel while I'm here. Tomorrow is tax day. The depot will have collection hours from 7 to 10 and then also from 5 to 7 in the evening. So we'll get that wrapped up. And then Mary and she's going to go over the process with me of transferring the funds from the village to the school district to get those over. So we'll have that taken care of. There are only 2 delinquent parcels from this past tax year, and there's nothing past last year. So it's just those 2 parcels. One parcel is making payments. The other one have not heard from. There is an attorney, Kevin O'Toole, who has sent letters. So we'll have to probably make a decision coming at some point once this next round of taxes goes delinquent. If we want to do anything, move forward with any sort of tax sale or anything like that. So we can discuss that at a later date. But good news, like I said, there's only 2 delinquent parcels from prior year. That's really all I have. Like I said, everything focused right now is on the tax collection. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, once Ray moves on to the next agenda item, I'm going to jump off and process some more checks.
Okay, I'll ask a question quickly.
Sure.
Those 2 delinquent parcels, how much do they represent in terms of tax revenue?
I don't have it right in front of me, but I'm going to say it's probably in the neighborhood of only $5,000 or $6,000.
Okay.
The one that's paying, I believe it's down to about $2,000 roughly left. I was hoping it was going to be paid prior to this next round going, but the property owner wasn't going to be able to make that happen. And the other one, the total outstanding, I think, is in the $2,000 to $3,000 range.
Very low. So
Yes, very low. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have a question for Doug?
Nope.
Then I think we'll say good evening to Doug and let him get on with his other work, which maybe is tax collecting work. Right?
Exactly. Yep. That's what I'll be doing for the most of the rest of the evening.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Right. The agenda. We'll go to the consent agenda. Minutes of October 12th, 2022, and the warrants. I should have the warrants somewhere. Okay. There's a warrant that is for $189.68. The Catamount TV. $75, Lori, $50 for minutes, Long Trail School, that's a payment for our 1 6th grade student attending there. And that should have been paid in September, but they didn't get us an invoice, so it's being paid now. And then payment to the village school, $175,838. And an administrative fee to U.S. Bank, which now owns the note on the school's bond. And all the banks charge $1,000 for administration of this. And that's something the district has to pay. It doesn't get subsidized by the federal government. So that's $1,000. That adds up to $189.68 and a few cents beyond that. Let's see, and then there's a payroll warrant, which includes payment to Doug for treasurer's services and board stipends to Kim, Kiernan, myself, and Matthew. And plus all the 941 taxes and the state Vermont taxes, payroll taxes for $6,405.18. I think that's it on that. So, I'll make a motion that we pass the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Questions about minutes or any of those warrants that I can answer, or more Lori can answer on the minutes?
Looks good. I'll second that motion.
Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks. Policies none. Superintendent's report. I believe we're going to.
We're going to get a presentation
Yep.
based on questions were asked at last month's meeting. So Assistant Superintendent Laurie Derwin, Director of Student Support Services, Kate Abbott, are here this evening to talk to you about Tier 3 interventions.
Okay. Thank you for having us, and thank you for your question at the last meeting. So I'm gonna share my screen. There we go. So the question was around SVSU Tier 3 social, emotional, and behavior interventions. So the SVSU is required to have a multi-tiered system of support. And at the primary level, which is Tier 1, we provide supports for all students. And then 3 times a year, benchmark data is collected, and then we identify students that might be in need of interventions. And so in Tier 2, there are interventions in addition to what all students receive. And sometimes we have students that, based on data and need access to Tier 3, which is available for a few of our students that demonstrate this need. So there's a few, when we talk about social, emotional, and behavior, there are lots of acronyms because things have changed a lot since I was in the classroom. And so we just want to cover a few of them. I already shared MTSS is the acronym for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. Behavior Intervention Plan is often referenced as, you hear BIP or BIP. Educational Support Team is a requirement of all schools. It's the problem-solving team, and that's the acronym is EST. Crisis Prevention Intervention is CPI. Functional Behavioral Assessment is FBA. Individual Education Plan is an IEP. And a new one for me, and I'm now, I think, in year 2, so I'm getting used to this one. And a board certified behavior analyst is a BCBA, and then applied behavioral analysis. You'll hear us use that language below, and it's referenced as ABA. So when you look at tier 3 interventions, just to acclimate you a little bit, you want to make sure that you have a good description to reference what the support entails, and then that you have clear entry criteria, which helps school teams in their conversation to see if it's a good match for a student. You identify ways to progress monitor, because you want to make sure that whatever you're implementing is working. And then you also have exit criteria, because the goal is always to return the student to the gen ed setting. So some of the few initial district-wide resources or SVSU resources that we have available at the tier 3 level to support social, emotional, and behavior. We do offer mental health services to support anxiety and depression. A consultation can happen with school counselors, clinicians, the school nurse, and we work closely with our community partners such as United Counseling Service to access family emergency services. And these are all accessed through school-wide team meetings. We offer crisis prevention intervention consultations with our district CPI instructor, who is available to meet with teams. Crisis prevention intervention is all around providing educators with skills to safely respond to various levels of risk. We also offer an SVSU crisis consult team. A building could ask for some experts just to come sit with the team to brainstorm. And we offer these resources, especially when a child is experiencing trauma, because that could happen at any moment. And we want to make sure that we have people that can support conversations.
Right. So our next intervention is on-point intervention. This is a behavioral intervention open to SVSU students in grades 1 through 5. It specializes in trauma-informed behavioral, therapeutic, and social emotional support. The intervention is a small class setting staffed by teachers, paraprofessionals, and clinicians, as well as the BCBA. And the district referral team meeting considers applicants to the program based on the child's prior supports. So in order to be accepted into the intervention, children have to have access building level supports with treatment integrity. So their plans have had to be run with fidelity. They can be on an EST plan, they can have a coordinated support plan, an FBA, a functional behavioral assessment, and a behavior plan. So they need to also have a referral in for mental health counseling to be considered for the on-point intervention.
So what's the fidelity requirement? Meaning that if the plan in place hasn't been executed according to its parameters, then there's no access. That gate's closed until that's done. Is that correct?
Essentially, yes. It's like saying you can't write a behavior plan and not implement it and then say it didn't work.
Yeah.
So the behavioral consult would probably be used before acceptance. If the child was referred to this intervention and the behavior plan was written in September and it's only October, they would say, try this a little longer before you work towards this intervention.
Yep.
Children's progress is monitored through individual behavior plans. And children who are safe for 80% of the day for 2 consecutive months are then considered for return to their home elementary schools. BCBAs are board certified behavioral analysts. They are an SVSU resource, and any SVSU school can request a consultation from a BCBA to help a student that's demonstrating a pattern of disruptive behavior that's interfering with their learning or the learning of others. Again, with this intervention, the child needs to have had tier 1 and 2 supports that were attempted and documented but not successful, and they would either need to have an EST plan, a 504 plan, or an IEP. So the BCBA then provides additional intervention strategies and data collection tools, and then the consultation is monitored with how the child does on the data collection tools the BCBA provides. Additionally, the BCBA can provide a functional behavioral assessment And so this is one tier up, meaning there's a full assessment done with parent permission for children that are experiencing challenging behavior that are interrupting their learning. So the FBA is a problem-solving process that helps identify the function of that behavior and then what replacement skills would then be taught in order for that child to help develop more adaptive skills in the classroom. Then a behavior intervention plan is created to help that child with those challenging behaviors and is implemented in that classroom. So the FBA is the top tier of behavioral intervention supports for the BCBAs. And again, that's monitored through that behavioral intervention plan goals.
And that's at the tier 3 level or tier 2?
That's a tier 3. So
Tier 3.
you wouldn't support an FBA if they haven't done tier 1 and 2 already and have data collection, because it's a very individualized, labor intensive
Right.
assessment. It takes about 10 hours.
And how many people do we have doing functional behavioral assessments?
5, but not all of them are part-time. Some of them are part-time.
Okay.
So tier 4 is an additional tier off the top of the pyramid for the MTSS pyramid. In order to access tier 4 interventions, you need to have an IEP. So these are only interventions only accessed through IEP team placements. The first of these is Ideals, and Ideals is a special education placement for students that have complex disabilities. So students that might need assistance with independence with their care and learning. They might need adapted curriculum. They might need support with feeding and communication or personal care. Children generally are, if they meet the state's criteria for the alternate assessment, they also meet criteria for entry into an Ideals intervention. Progress monitoring is based on IEPs, and students in Ideals access the general education environment as well as the Ideals classroom, but they have to, the teachers make a determination about what times they should be in the general education setting to get the most of from their IEP goals that they can in that environment. The New England Center for Children is a contracted service that we have throughout the SVSU. The New England Center focuses primarily on an applied behavioral analysis approach for learners oftentimes that have autism spectrum-based disabilities. The New England Center, we offer New England Center classes at Molly Stark, at Bennington Elementary, the middle school, and the high school. And children who enter the New England Center program need to have demonstrated a very high need for adult support in order to be able to master and generalize skills. And that could be a 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 adult-staff ratio, adult-to-child ratio within that setting. And progress is monitored based on IEP goals and objectives. And students generally they increase their time in the general education setting with their next supports throughout their school careers until they are fully in the general education setting. But as they're working on that, we access the general education environment whenever that's appropriate for that learner.
So our goal, the request was an overview of our district tier 3 social emotional behavior interventions. And so we provided an overview, and we would love to answer any questions you have.
Can you provide those, that presentation, the visual part of it?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want us to email that to you?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for that. And also it'll be helpful to be able to read it as well.
Absolutely.
So the goal is to return the particular student to the classroom.
That there's the school, because they stay enrolled at their school. Yeah.
And so you track the successes here, and if there are not successes, you keep track of that. The children who don't succeed stay in the program unless they're age out, right?
Not always. Children who don't succeed might be recommended for an out-of-district
Out of
placement.
district placement? Okay.
Yeah. This is the most intensive service that we have in district,
Right,
but children
yeah.
do have to sometimes travel further to access higher levels of care.
And I don't remember hearing any reports recently at the SU level, which is where this would be presented, on how many children we have in these various programs and how successful we're being. I'm sure, hopefully we're doing well, but given the context of COVID, maybe not so well right now. So is that something that will happen this year at SU level? We'll get a report on this, or is that going to be data that's too small in number to present in any way?
So I can give you, I mean, a kind of a ballpark. There's,
We're always cautious about how many students are in programs so that we don't identify anything.
Identify, right, yeah.
Sorry, Kate, I cut you off.
well, I mean, I was just gonna say, we have, New England Center classrooms have about 6 to 7 children in them, and we have
4.
7.
Seven classrooms?
Yeah.
Between
At 4 buildings. I mean,
MAU,
Yeah.
2 facilities there,
Yeah.
and Molly Stark. And
Bennington.
And
Bennington,
Elementary.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Ideals program is a similarly small classroom,
Yeah.
and we have a number of classes at the middle and high school level, and then just one at the elementary.
Right.
So it's a very small percentage of the population total.
Which is the goal of a tiered system.
Yeah, how many, since there's an elementary and a secondary, some of the elementary children obviously transition ultimately into the secondary system.
Mhm.
And so it becomes most of their career in elementary and secondary education to be there for some.
I think it's important to point out though, in the NECC program, they're not in that intervention. The goal is that they're not in it all day, that they are back into
Back
their
in
classroom.
And ideals as well, so
Yes.
go back and
Yeah.
forth.
Yes.
I guess I have a question, and I'm sorry if I missed this when I was taking in all of the slides, but is there a specific program that addresses behavioral needs versus academic needs, or is it always both social, emotional, or psychiatric and academic together?
So our on-point center, which we have like 3 tiers for age groups. It's on-point at the elementary, Champlain at the middle, and Patriot at the high school addresses the social, emotional / mental health needs of children that have those needs that are interfering with their learning. At the elementary school, it's the on-point center though. So the challenge with that is that the children visit that center for the intervention, and then they would transition back to their home school once they're stabilized.
Okay, thanks.
And so all of these programs, there's usually a social emotional content to the issues that the student has,
Yeah, so that of the,
which would distinguish it from just a
yeah,
IEP.
yeah. So tonight, what we highlighted tonight is our tier 3 interventions that have a focus on that social, emotional, and behavior piece.
Right.
And we try to staff them with the appropriate personnel, clinicians, my new terminology, BCBAs, people that are gonna really
Right.
help to triage and help students reach their goals so
Right.
they can.
So
Return.
the third tier of the MTSS is basically may have intellectual or other issues, but is usually includes the social emotional content. Is that right? Am I correct in
So the-
assuming that?
I think you're talking about the fourth tier. So there's the
Oh,
three
the
tiers
fourth
within the,
tier.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the two programs in the fourth tier that you need to have an IEP to access are NEC and Ideals.
Okay.
So really Ideals is designed for children that have adaptive skills needs, and they might do things like grocery shopping, cooking, bouncing, more financials, functional academics, as well as they would assist with things like feeding, toileting, and then adapted and modified curriculum. So the students generally would have both cognitive and speech language and motor oftentimes needs in that
Yeah.
environment.
Okay.
The NEC program is, those two programs use a curriculum called the ACE curriculum. And what it does is it basically looks at anywhere that child is developing between 18 months of age and 21, the skills that in progression. So if there's an older learner that needs a younger skill, they teach through sequential skills-based units. So even if you haven't quite mastered, skills that would be expected a little bit older, it lets you dive back down into the standards at a younger age. So there's an academic component of both programs, but both programs do focus on the social emotional and the behavioral components. The On-Point program is more mental health and trauma-based, whereas the New England Center program is more based around what we know about learners that have autism spectrum disabilities.
Do the students at the village school have access to all of these programs?
So students students who are North Bennington residents, if they're, as North Bennington is part of the SBSU, would have access to the programs here. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's pretty complicated, and you have a lot of people employed trying to help these kids. And
And there might be those who say we don't have enough.
yeah, I've heard that before many times. People coming before the SU board at various times.
Yeah.
The establishment of the NECC classrooms was the last one I remember major.
And, we're in the part of the budget cycle right now where our principals have submitted all their requests for next year.
Right.
And those being compiled, there are requests for staff to deal with students, everything from behavior issues to social emotional. I think what I'm hearing more is if we could find more BCBAs, every school would like their own rather than sharing one.
Right. Right. And is there, do you think there's a COVID kind of balloon, so to speak?
Well, I hope it's only a balloon and not.
I said bloom, but.
No, I think one thing we have to remember, and I'm thankful for the messaging from the state, is that we have to look at the outcome of the pandemic. It's gonna take many years, and I appreciate that they.
No,
they said
I think that the kids the students have been here through that, they're going to be dealing with those issues the rest of their lives in one way or another, hopefully growing through them. It may take longer for some of them.
But again, if you're at the school that is having that crisis, that particular moment, you take no comfort in what I'm going to say. But the numbers are, compared to how many students we have, 3,000 plus students between Arlington and the schools here, the numbers are, relatively small. But in that moment of a crisis, that is no comfort to hear that.
Right. Because the need at that particular point in time fills the whole balloon that you're in. A little. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. So, I think we'll get back to this a little bit when we go into the executive session, because I wanted to hear about our students. Are there other questions that anyone wants to ask, or shall I just move into my report, which is very brief. So. Okay, well, thank you very much. I think Kate's going to stick around at least.
Yep, she
I'm
is.
not sure about Laura, whether she needs
You
to.
can, yeah, we don't need you for the executive session if you want to.
Thanks, everybody.
I know you have an early ride.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Laura.
Absolutely.
All right, so I have an other under there, and I guess that's a catch-all, but I do have the village school has had 3 students come in post the census date, and so I think that can boost the numbers up to. Well, I'll let Tim say, because I think it must boost it up to 111, but I'm not sure.
I think we'll have to see where it all lands. We've had
Yeah.
some folks literally, we had another student just come on Tuesday. We had another family come in and fill out the paperwork today. So we may be adding them later this week or next week. So I'll have to see where we land come the next census.
So I saw file from last week. I think that was someone, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think that was someone that was transitioning from, well, I don't know, from out west and had a delayed entry, but I'm not sure if that's, maybe someone else. I'm having trouble keeping track of.
We are as well, I'll be honest. This has been
Yeah.
the most interesting fall we've had for late entry students.
Yeah. And then I did see a family that just moved into 940 Water Street with 2 children, one in 3rd and one in 5th, I think.
Yeah, and that's separate from the 2 I'm talking about for this week.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the number is, we'll figure this number out for February. I'm sure of that. At the moment, I just know that there's some growth in those numbers, and so I'm just sort of reporting about what I see because I have to approve these residencies. And then the last item was to talk about food service, and I had sent a letter out to Jim and the facilities manager,
Holly Anderson. Yep.
about that and to my board. So at any rate, I looked up the act that was passed this past legislative session, which just basically funds this year as a full pay, no pay system for everybody. So the question is, since they intend to extend it beyond that point in time, but have provided no financing mechanism for that, it seems like it's a good time to talk about that year, since this year seems to be in hand more or less. And am I correct about that? That's what I saw in the legislation that was funded for this year to the tune of $29 million for the state. In fact, I have it here on my computer. There's a lot of strikeout, but $29 million from the ed fund, from actually money coming to the ed fund from COVID relief funds of various sorts. It will cover all the costs of paying for food, breakfast, and lunch for children and all throughout the state who are in the public school system. The question is, what about next year? Because as it's the intention of the legislature that this continue. I don't know if it's the governor's intention, but I believe that's going to be the case. And for our particular students, this is, as I pointed out, is something of an equity issue, since some of our students who are district residents access this through SVU ESD schools now, and prior to the COVID even, I think. And that will continue next year. So I'm concerned about the options, whether there are options of joining the current food service committee, or I forget if it's a committee or what the C stands for in it, under the CEP program. And what obstacles are there in that? I mean, there was an allusion to various obstacles from the state, and not any detail. So,
The state, but the response that we have is that the Abbey Group does not have the capacity to add any additional schools at this time. This year, particularly because they had to take on Arlington for the SU this year, so that is now one of their schools, and they don't even have that fully staffed. The response to your inquiry was they don't have the capacity to do it.
They're already doing our school as is.
Yeah, that's their response. So I would suggest that, that's the response that we have.
That's unacceptable. Really is. I mean, well, it's unacceptable that you're willing to, that's what you need, is for them to say, no, we can't do it, even though they're already doing it. It's the difference is just who's paying for it.
So then I would suggest that the trustees of the village school should address it with the SU board. I'm not dodging that. I'm just saying that's
with the
really where it should
SU
go.
board, or there's a food service
With the food service, the SVSU school service committee.
And how do they do that? Through the committee, or?
The trustees of the village school could contact my office, and we can let them know when the next meeting is, and they could go to that meeting and address it.
Okay. So do you know when that next meeting is?
No, I don't, but I haven't heard from the trustees of the village school either. I'm not being difficult about it, but it's like, it really isn't the purview of this board, right? It's the trustees, Tim, right? Your request for the trustees.
Yep.
And that's when I asked, I was told that was the answer that you were given a couple of years ago, that the trustees of the village school should reach out. Now that may not, you may say that's incorrect, but that's the answer that I received, and that's all I can report on.
Well, the only time that I've ever talked about it was last year, and it was probably around this time last year. And you said, because you were going to be adding Arlington, that you wanted to wait a year. And that then it would make sense. So is Arlington now part of your food service, or are they still running their own separate food service?
It's a combination. There's some employees, some Abbey, but the Abbey Group is now the manager of the Arlington Food Service Firm.
Okay. So I'm
The
just going
proper-
from what,
The
I'm
proper
just going
place
from
for
what
this
you,
discussion would be at the food service committee with the trustees of, or if you're their representative, then you should be having that discussion there.
okay, it's just that was not presented last year when we talked about this. So I didn't understand that that was the process.
Well,
So I'll make sure that you'll know when the next meeting is. I don't have it here in front of me when they're meeting again.
so are you saying that the trustees need to make send a letter saying that they are interested in participating in this committee at the next meeting?
I don't know what to advise the trustees. I don't know. I don't know who they are, you know, and
But
I don't
I'm not
feel-
asking you.
I don't feel, well,
I'm asking
I don't
you,
feel.
should they send a letter to you to forward to this committee?
Are you a trustee for the village?
No, I'm not. I'm trying to clarify what the process is. It doesn't seem to be that clear.
Well, by design, of course. We've been doing 6-7 years at this one. Did Sacred Heart,
Back with Pembroke.
Sacred Heart predated me. I have no knowledge of how they became part of
Well, I
this
know
group.
that, and I'm not, that's not your problem, I know.
I get that, Jim. I'm wondering if they had to appeal in this method to get the services they now get. And if so, then there was a path that we could have been made aware of, us or I guess the village school trustees.
Right.
And we would have been through this, but it just seems a little strange. That's all.
It is strange because I feel like I'm not having this discussion with the right board, right? Shouldn't I be having this? If the village have not been it's called the trustees, Tim? Is that the trustees?
Yeah, and I represent their interests,
Yeah.
and I wrote a letter to you last year around this,
Right.
like a formal letter on their behalf last year. And then you told me the best thing would be to come back this year.
Right. And our response to you this year was the Abbey Group has said that they don't have the capacity to do it. And that's the best answer I can sit here and tell you. I can't.
Okay.
That
And I
might
would
not-
just say that when we were corresponding with you via email, no one directed us to have our Board of Trustees take this over. So again,
So that's
if we had
what
been
I'm
directed in
suggesting.
that way,
Yeah, that's my suggestion tonight. Because that's, you know, who would have the authority to enter into an agreement with the food service group. It wouldn't be the North Bennington Prudential Committee, it would be the trustees. So as, you know,
That's correct.
upon your email, that's my suggestion of who should be leading the charge for that.
So would you mind saying to whom that should be directed? Or
Yeah, I told Tim I would let him know when that next meeting is. And then you can, you know, ask directly to the Abbey Group about their response.
it's uncertain to me why it would be out of the hands of the Prudential Committee who have children who are receiving these benefits elsewhere, at the middle school, and if they choose to go to these other schools, it seems like it really is in our.
Well, Matt, there's other schools that you send your students to that you're not asking for them to join the food service group, right? I'm not sitting here to argue with you. But it seems that, you know, how many different schools do you send your students to? It's not just one school. So
3,
if we're
4, or
talking-
5, depending on when, but the point is those schools aren't seeking that.
Right.
And for whatever reason, but because there are students who are going to places that are offered that, and this school has expressed for 8 years or more their interest in that program, and have been, I think, kind of shut down every November. Oh, we're too close to budget season. Go, you know, next year. And, you know, I don't think Abbey Group is in a position to say we can't do this. If it becomes a interpretation of the law that these students should be provided that service, then Abbey Group's not the one to say, well, sorry, we can't do it. Even though they already feed our kids. That's what I find interesting. Like it's not like they need to add staff to feed our 100 kids. So their answer is kind of empty.
And I would suggest again that the trustees of the village will address that with the Abbey Group.
First time I've heard that it's actually in the hands of the Abbey Group or in the hands of the trustees of the village school. We've gone years around here where we've just been told as a Prudential committee to come back the next year to deal with it.
I don't believe I told the Prudential committee. Maybe it was Tim that I said that to.
Okay. Oh, it's on.
Because I do not attend those food service committee meetings.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm bringing a message back. So I think it would be best to bring that conversation to that committee.
All right. That's best we're gonna get, I guess, at the moment. So, I would like to move into executive session and, sorry, I just lost my. Just handle that.
Are you, just for the sake of CAT TV,
Yep.
you're not going to return to take any action.
I don't believe so unless there's action to be taken. I think this is just a report that I'm looking for.
There's no action listed for after. So
No, that's right. And there's no action. So we will come out and close the meeting. That's all.
Yeah.
You need a motion to go into executive or you all froze suddenly?
Yeah, no, I guess we do.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second
I will second it, yeah.